All right, it is another wonderful time on television on our program, Africa Discourse on Independent Television. My name is Evan Sunokoge, and today on the program on Africa Discourse, we're going to be looking at the four nations that the Secretary of State to the U.S. visited recently. And of course, we understand that he was also in Nigeria, whereby he met with the Nigerian president. And very, very promising visit, you may want to say. Against the backdrop that lots of ways to explain away the purpose and, of course, the aim of the visit. And you and I know that when the West, are spearheaded by the United States of America, visits a nation, of course, there is always an interest. What is the interest? That is what we're going to be looking at today as we look at the program Africa Discourse. Well, on this program this afternoon, we're still privileged to have two guests. We have Nuruddin Asulugi, Islamic scholar, and of course a public affairs analyst, an international public affairs analyst as well. So welcome to the program Africa Discourse.
Thank you for having me. Good afternoon, viewers.
Okay, and also we have a big brother friend, a comrade Obasomi Jude, who is the Chief Responsibility Officer, Just Maria Escriva, and of course somebody that is so interested in good political governance, good politics in Nigeria. So he's going to be joining us via Zoom as we progress on this show. All right, so as we are waiting to join Comrade Jude Obasomi, let's me just start with the guest on set. The man on the set here now, talking about Nuruddin Asulugi. Now, Nuruddin, when the West visits, a lot of ways that we can explain it away. Now, this visit now, some people begin to suspect that it is because of the waning influence of the U.S. or the West in Africa, and or the fact that the U.S. really wants to reestablish cooperation in terms of security and also in terms of economic ties with Africa. I don't know whether you agree with that submission.
Well, the fact of the matter is that there is no one country out there that is a Father Christmas in the word that it used. Every country that is worth that name has its own vested interest. It is that interest that requires to be protected. And the interest is one that you cannot give an exact shape to. It keeps like metastasis, like a cancer, it keeps spreading. And so where there are constituency, they will want to consolidate and go on a demographic expansion for as long as they help to drive those primary interests. So when U.S. came, regardless of what it is that they have said that they intend to do, which will be of mutual benefit, no one country except you are dealing with another country that is equally well positioned, that talks about mutuality of interest. The underlining whatever is basically to explore and to exploit. And that, of course, they have consistently done. Nothing has happened to change that trajectory. When in 1926, the Liberian government was like browbeating into conceding to fire, stone, tire, and rubber, whatever, it was basically to meet the increasing demand for tire, because that was the automobile age, increasing demand for tires in the United States of America. And so they needed a place where they could drive that interest. Liberia became readily available, and virtually all that was to make Liberia develop, grow, and ultimately develop as a country was spirited away from Liberia. Okay. If you study or read the history of Firestone in Liberia, you cannot but begin to say, well, it was a pitiable and the most lachrymose state of affair, which when America is driven by its interests, basically he becomes inscrutably hoggish and absolutely nothing, no conscience, no compassion when they drive that interest.
Okay. Now, Nuruddin, what do you make of this silent fight now, among the Chinese country, and of course you have the U.S. also there, and of course you've got the former USSR. So what do you make of these three countries trying to vest their interest in Africa?
Well, like I have said, once people are driven by interest, selfishness will naturally be the wheel on which it runs. You can't blame them. It is for you to begin to define and to recalibrate that which represents your own interest too. What they have done, of course, is that increasingly, even before now, Africa is a continent that is so imponderable, endowed with mineral and natural resources, except that it had been argued, and every indices that you find on the table tend to accentuate that thinking that there is a destitution of people, who needed to superintend this homologous, whatever resource that the African continent had been blessed with. And so, as the world increased, do not again forget, regardless of what you say obtains in Russia, for example, all of these persons have an economy that is capitalist oriented. And so there is the craze, the insatiable quest for resources in order to be able to drive their industries back at home. And Africa, fortunately for them, and unfortunately for those of us who are here because we have not found the right acts to be able to manage this resource to our advantage, are only looking towards this direction because resources are cheap. And again, you have cheap labor to exploit them. Because as I speak with you now, in the Taraba axis of this country, virtually all of the grains that are grown there, because there is a problem because of the Ukraine war with Russia. Ukraine used to be the world food basket, at least for grains. Now, because of this war, there is a serious threat to that particular commodity, and those that require it are still in requirement, because the fact that there is a diet in production does not operate to mean that people no longer have need for them. And so in the Taraba axis in this country, you find that these products are well grown, but the Chinese companies are there buying them up. And so you just bring in the dollar, just miserable dollars that would have been miserable in the United States of America, because we no longer have a currency in this country. By the time you exchange that, we obviously do not have. What is currency? Is that which has capacity for exchange, for purchase. Where is it used? Where is it used? So it's sometimes not even worth the paper on which it is written, because it does not perform what a currency ought to perform. But that is not the point we want to make. So you come with very insignificant dollars, you buy all of the nairas in the market. And so you buy all of the grains and you take them away. Okay. And that represents a serious threat, because they require this over there, and so they are buying. And because Africa provides this fertile ground for what they want, there is a contestation. Do not forget that the Berlin Conference of the 19th century, 1860, whatever, it was basically about what Africa had to provide.
What they cannot offer.
What they had to offer, that which of course they didn't want. So you have people, you have profit. And in this wise, it is the people that are subordinated to the profit. And so once that becomes the driving force, what you find now is what normally will play out. So Africa is well positioned for the exploitation of China. No one of these three is a friend. Africa is well positioned for China, and America probably gets the feeling that for too long we've been out of the scene. So there is a need for us to do a re-entry into the scene and do the best we can to get whatever size of the cake we can get to ourselves.
Now, Nuruddin, what would you say about the insecurity issues in the Sahel region? I mean, for quite some time now, it's been an issue. New government comes in America, and of course it goes out. You hear them keep on talking about the insecurity in the Sahel region. I remember Donald Trump. It was also a big issue for him. And of course, you've got Joe Biden now. He keeps on talking about the insecurity. So what is the thing about insecurity in the Sahel region, of which Nigeria is part of, that the U.S. or maybe any other interested nations of the world cannot really handle?
Well, you see, the truth of the matter is that the insecurity there is just like what is said in local parlance, that when someone hides a thing and is part of those looking for it, you are not likely going to get it. We do know as a fact, yes, unfortunately, you have some stooges, local stooges, but they do not have the capacity to sustain the insecurity you find in the Sahel region for the long it has stayed. But it is there fructifying. The air that it requires for the fire to continue to combust is adequately supplied externally because they benefit. Once there is this discombobulation in the region, resources are being spirited away. And so you will need to sustain that tempo in order that you continue to drain the resources of this country.
So are you trying to say that those that try to prefer solution are also responsible?
But do not forget, I mean, we are all students of history. America was training people for counter-terrorism in Niger. The same persons they were training were those who torpedoed the government of Niger. How do you explain that? Under their very watch, under their nose, they removed the same whatever they were supposed to protect. Because what represented threat to Niger was the activities of the terrorists. And so, hey, please come help train our men, deepen their skills on how to deal with these persons. And so, what followed? Bazoum became history.
Okay, when the U.S. Secretary of State was in, let's see now, when he was in Ivory Coast, he mentioned the sum of $45 million US that is going to boost coastal West African security issues, and of course extending to Nigeria and some other nations of the Sahel region. Now, a lot of persons they are so interested in this, said amount, because this is not the first time that U.S. probably is making a kind of a pledge to boost insecurity and to boost security and all that. Now, what would you want to say about this amount, at this time, given the fact that huge amounts of money has been given before?
Now, the question that we needed to ask is, if we are seated in this studio like we are now, and then we are choking on account of the smoke that is entering, and all we do is to pull our dresses and struggle to fan away the smoke, we will ultimately get asphyxiated because it's an exercise in dissipation. So what is it that we needed to do? Find out what the provenance of the issues are. What baited this issue of insecurity? Bad governance. And these are governments that have enjoyed the endorsement of the Western world, particularly the United States of America. The more horrible a government is to the people, the more the government reneges or fails in discharging out its social responsibility or contract to the people, the more accolades it gets from the United States of America. And so America had become a safe haven, as it were, for monies that were peculated, that would have gone into deepening the economy and make the people to live a life of clover, have become a safe haven for keeping such monies. And so when you look at all of these issues, then we ask, for how long are we going to continue to remain infantile and allow ourselves to be entertained by such acts of imbecilities? I'll give you a clear example. In Jonathan's time, there was clear refusal to sell arms to fight the insurgents. As at that time, if arms were provided, we would have staunched the degeneration that we were going into. That cascade would have been arrested. So you say, you were not going to give arms. You were not going to give arms, but you have created avenues for all of those persons to get arms. You have created avenues for them to get arms. When Buhari was there, the same issue was that we are not going to sell arms because the military is involved in human rights violation. You ask the question, what right did those people have who had violated the sanctity of the mosque, the church, the homes, for whom life had no meaning? And so when the military went after them, you threatened them with the likelihood of appearing before the ICJ for genocide or genocidal activities. Now, you do all of this ostensibly to demoralize them, to deflate the passion that they had to fight and bring to standstill the whole issue and the criminality around the act of terrorism. And so when the man gives you a peanut drop in the ocean, because when you say you gave $45 million, to do what? The oil that is being stolen in this country is sold in the international market, managed by these same persons. And so when it is sold, it provides funds for that business to continue. You allow shipment of weapons and weaponries far much better than the countries, the militaries of the countries of the different countries that you say you are providing funds for have to combat. And of course, when it comes to warfare, it is a function of who has the highest whatever power, firing power. Yeah. And so you make provision for all this. It's like you asking that someone goes to the market to market salt and you accompany the person with a tsunami. And so this is a deception. And for as long as the African continent continue to outsource its own security.
Now the question we ask, Nuruddin, the African continent, are they aware of all this? Are they aware? Do they know?
Why would they not know? How do they not know? But of course you have leadership. You see, the truth of the matter is that it's not that they do not know. Are you saying that the armed robber who kills does not know that to kill is bad? He does, except that the profit is so inebriating, so pixelating, that it turns into insignificant. It helps. Of course, when you take what intoxicates you, what inebriates you, it numbs feelings. And so there is the anesthetization of those feelings. So when you look at the bandits, for example, you look at kidnappers, for example, you look at armed robbers, for example, and you look at those who occupy political position, who regal in the defecation of the common patrimony of the people. What is common to all of these that we have listed is the issue of profit.
Okay, I think, yeah, we've got Jude Obasomi back now. Hello, Jude. Yeah, okay. Yeah, because of the connection, we almost lost you there. So you are back now. All right, so the question I asked, the U.S. Secretary of State came to Africa, and the visit was, on 4 African nations, of which Nigeria was part of it. Now, a lot of persons are, still trying to explain and trying to see what the U.S. really came to do. Now, the U.S. for them, they said they have only come to try to establish more on, security ties, on how to cooperate with Nigeria and other 3 African nations, on how to relate with these countries, security ties and economic ties and all that. Now, from your point of view, what would you want to say about the visit?
Thank you very much. And once again, sincere apologies. Lost network from my end in Ekom. And let me also greet Malam Nuruddin quite some time. Good. Yes, coming straight to your question, you need to understand that America does not go to any part of the world where they do not have interest. I recall this 4-country visit being made by Antony is aimed at letting these countries get to know that the Biden administration has interest, serious interest in these countries. And no, these are not just countries in Africa. For example, now Nigeria is noted to be one of the largest economies in terms of
size,
the market in Nigeria. So for America, they strongly believe that fine, we need to see how best we can secure our ties with Nigeria, particularly on the aspect. Okay, let's not forget that Asian giants, China, Japan, and others are strongly fighting very hard to see how they can capture the market, particularly in the areas of electronic, in the areas of pharmaceuticals and what have you. So they must have studied their own foreign policy to see that the losing grip of this country, particularly Nigeria. And for them, they just felt that they have to come and pay a visit to this country to see how they can secure greater ties. That will be, more benefit to their own country. Recall during the briefing after the U.S. Secretary met with, Nigeria's president, and several questions were thrown at himself and also the Minister of Foreign Affairs. See that it's being made by the U.S. Secretary unable to actually understand the relevance of this visit. The response given by what's it called now, the foreign minister or foreign minister, Nigerian foreign minister, was so, how will I put it now, so generic. There was nothing concrete in terms of goods from this visit. But when the U.S. Secretary was talking, you can see a man that had a clear mission come to this country. He talked about electronics, the internet, talked about education, talked about health, talked about several things. And when Nigeria was isolated, we could say that he only came and come and broaden our, see how best you can close the gap between the relationship between Nigeria and the U.S. For me, it was an American agenda again to see how they can further again maybe win us over and try to see how best Nigeria is going to be a dumping ground, because from the conversation, Nigeria did not come with a clear-cut policy or agitation or a demand that this visit you are making to our country is what we want to do. On the area of security, when the U.S. Secretary was asked in terms of their support to Nigeria, the guy cleverly dodged it. And the Nigerian president, the Nigerian spokesman, I expected him to make one or two comments, but nothing was done. But in this country where an American was kidnapped by some guys in the north, and in less than 7 days, a rescue mission came out. Without over 90% of that good to their country. So it is good for Nigeria as a country that has great potentials to grow, to think of how best to come with their own local technology, local administration to see how best to survive. And again, in one of the comments of the U.S. Secretary, he cleverly talked about corruption, which has eaten no sincere government or sincere businessman who want to come to a country that is so corrupt, a country that you cannot, talk about safety. Nobody will come and invest. But if all those things are in place, I think that Nigeria stand to benefit from this visit made by the U.S. Secretary to Nigeria.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Comrade Judah Basome, for that now. Quickly, let's, Nuruddin, just in another 1 minute or two now. Now, let's look at the way the U.S. has described these four countries. They say they are working democracies. Talking about Nigeria, Angola, you have Cape Verde, and of course, you've got Ivory Coast. Now, these countries, are they really working democracies, Nuruddin?
Well, it will depend on the perspective from which one he's looking at it. If you were to take the Nigerian scenario, for example, we have had more people put in office by the court rather than by the decision of those who are the voters, which is rather
unfortunate. Call that working democracy? Which
is rather unfortunate. Take the Plateau case, for example. The Court of Appeal brought those who didn't win an election and replaced them with those who lost. I mean, sent back in those who won and brought in those who didn't win. Unfortunately, they didn't have the opportunity of going to the Supreme Court. And then you can begin to see why the Supreme Court took a swipe of them. Would you, in all honesty, say that those persons, if democracy is government of the people by the people, the only reason why it is so is that the people determine or decide who rules over them. But in 1983, there was massive election. I mean, rigging. 1983, when Shehu Shagari returned to power. He may still have won. That is not the issue. But the fact was that what happened was not a reflection of what it would have been. And Americans describe us as the fourth largest democracy. But again, it's not for Americans to define for all what is democratic or not, because they too have not demonstrated that they have the ethical platform to do so, given what had happened that brought Bush Jr. and what Trump and that kind of stuff. But I think we will continue to have problems for as long as we keep outsourcing our relevance. It is for us as Africans to identify our problems and speak truth to all of those issues. live reality rather than the illusions that we have allowed to characterize our being. I think that fundamentally is the problem that we are confronted with.
Okay. All right. So we'll take a short pause now. Still on the program Africa Discourse, and when we return, we'll look at some more key issues as we go on the program this afternoon. Please stay tuned.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken met with Nigerian President Bola Tinubu on Tuesday and praised his leadership, but said it is no secret that there are challenges that need to be overcome to unlock the full potential of Africa's largest democracy.
Tackling corruption, making it easier for foreign companies to repatriate capital, these will all pull in a transformative direction and pull in transformative investment. I know that President Tinubu is focused on these challenges, and we also welcome his very bold economic reforms to unify the currency and fuel subsidies.
Blinken said he had discussed the July coup by a military junta in neighboring Niger.
We also discussed challenges to democracy and security in West Africa. We very much appreciate Nigeria's leadership in ECOWAS to try to move to a return to the constitutional order and democracy in Niger after it's been disrupted.
Blinken traveled to Nigeria from the Ivory Coast, where he met with Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara and discussed regional security challenges.
We appreciate particularly the leadership shown by Côte d'Ivoire in countering extremism and violence.
Blinken said this is his third trip to Nigeria as the top U.S. diplomat, including a virtual visit during the early days of the COVID-19 pandemic. One expert told VOA the Biden administration's diplomatic commitment to Africa is remarkable.
I've been working in and on Africa since 1985, and I've really never seen so much attention by the U.S. government to the continent, which I think is a great sign of U.S. engagement.
On Monday, Blinken launched the trip with a stopover in Cape Verde, a long-standing partner of the United States. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
So, Nuruddin, we still have you here. Talking about working democracies in Africa, just like what Comrade Jude, was trying to explain that the last, presidential election, we saw the U.S. sending observers to come and monitor the election. And we know that lots of, recommendations were made because, somehow they were not too satisfied with the way the elections went. Now, for an American official after the election now to come and want to describe Nigeria as a working democracy, is it that they don't take seriously the observations that these observers make when they come to monitor elections in these African nations?
Well, I think when he describes it, my understanding of what working democracy means, it encapsulates the admission that we are not there yet. And so the fact that it's not a military administration, that we have allowed this to stay for over 2 decades now, may be basically what it is that he had said. But beyond the fact that people were brought to monitor and what this man had said, what I think is far much more fundamental is the fact that why do we need others to tell us our story? Why would America, for crying out aloud, would not have an election? Horrible. What had happened in the case that made our God not to come was outright manipulation. It was not something that was accidental. It was planned. Excluding the black population, profiling them, were all calculated attempts to make sure that Bush, Jr. came in. And so you can't have a perfect situation, for example. Take what happened in Liberia recently, when we had admitted defeat. It was more to defend the system than to be selfish and self-centered. He could have gone into contestation. He was admitting the fact that, yes, absolutely, perfection does not exist in any system. Once it is human, you can't get that. And so what the Secretary of State, Antony, said when he came was what he needed to say to drive the primary interest. He was not going to subordinate the interest to what will placate you. If calling Tinubu the most handsome human being God had ever created, and that was going to drive the interest for which he came, he was just going to do that. I mean, you are not going to look at somebody you intend to destroy or someone you intend to do something for you, and you begin to tell the person the truth that you know that the person is not in a position to reconcile itself with. And so you've done well. And so I want to collapse, met all possible obstacles, all possible hurdles. And so he needed to stand, if you like, call it toadism, for as long as that drove the point. He may not have meant what he was saying, but it was a requirement for him to get to the point where he was going. It is now left for you when someone comes in and say, hey, Evans, the CEO of ITV. It's left for you to get intoxicated with that. It's left for you to say, no, I remember who I am. He's not going to tell me who I am. Because if you left with the mindset that you are what you are, then the person has had his way with you. But when you remember that, oh, I am not what this person had said.
I am.
Because I am sure that even Mr. President admits the fact that there were issues. There were issues. Yaradua came openly. That one had the courage of truth to say, what brought me was not flawless. It was flawed. We are going to do things to address that which was flawed. And in doing all of this, everyone must appreciate the fact that we all have roles to play, and we must begin to collapse all of the walls that tend to narrow the space that we have to sufficiently navigate around these issues and do what is required to be done. Because if we took a divide, it only helps in reinforcing that which would destroy us and make us pray for those external persons who come only to, because you know what had been repeatedly said, for which some persons took bullets, the likes of late Murtala Mohammed, was to say, we have a foreign policy. You are in the media world. No one of those persons who were in the media asked all of the contestants in 2023 and those before then, what is your policy, your foreign policy? Because your foreign policy must be an extension of what your internal policy or your local policy is. Nobody asked that question. Okay, and so they do not have one. When Jude said that the minister, the external affairs minister, didn't have anything to say, what was he going to say when there was no blueprint as to what our foreign policy is? All right,
so Jude Obasome, you're still there. Jude, now we understand that later on this year, the Chinese President Xi Jinping is also going to be on a tour in Africa, and Nigeria is going to be one of the countries that he's going to be visiting. Now, the question we ask now, Antony Blinken visited recently. Now, this idea of trying to make African nations, to be confused, permit me to use that word now, not to know which of these countries, which of these ties to really adhere to in looking for, partnership, cooperation and all that. What will you have to say about that?
All right, thank you very much. I think in my earlier comment, I mentioned that the coming of U.S. Secretary to Nigeria, basically for them to see how best they can, strengthen, a better market space in Nigeria. Nigeria has all it takes for any country in the world to do business with. Are you talking about the population? Are you talking about the kind of preference for people for imported goods and commodities? Are you talking about the lifestyle of Nigerians? So anything that comes to the country, people are willing and prepared to buy, because locally we've not been able to produce enough ourselves in terms of quantity, in terms of quality. So for the Chinese government now deciding to come over, it is part of this imperialist tendencies to say, the country that we must go there to dominate. Because we do not have any foreign policy that is sustainable. A government will come today and change their policies, unlike in the US, global economics. A president that comes in will need in place a template to drive that country. But in our own case, a president will come, maybe for 8 years, he will have his own 7 or 6 agenda that he wants to run, and that president will come, most of the time from the same party, he will say he has 4, he has 3 things that he wants to drive. Countries don't develop like that. You must have a chain of activities that you want to do to get to the top. So what they are doing is that they discovered that you do not even know what you want as a country. Because for one, you cannot even talk about what is our foreign policy of thinking or implementation. What do we want to achieve? The president has traveled around to so many countries. What have you been able to bring in? You see, a good product does not need too much marketing. You know that product and begin to come. So I still believe that what is going on now is that you realize that have several ties with other countries, for example, in the US, China, Japan, South Africa, and I think South Africa and Brazil for cocoa. So they now felt that the earlier we begin to come into this country, talk with leadership, to say that we can have the relationship with our own country better for. But let me tell you this, there is no investor that will come to a country where you have high level of corruption, where you have high level of abuse of offices, where you have high level of insecurity. So I strongly believe what we need to do, foreign direct investment, which has dropped drastically, is for us to create an enabling environment to attract these people. What they are not coming to do, say, what can we do? Let's say how we can dump this item there. When they buy, the foreign country will definitely go back to their own country. That is what they want to achieve. I don't believe that. What we need to do is not this paparazzi movement that we are currently doing of social contract come to visit us to begin to celebrate. What are we celebrating? The average man on the street wants to see some radical transformation. Recall the issue of the trade lines. Went to China, the previous regime, and they said they were going to do this and do that. We expect that maybe by today, train will be running from Benin to Abuja. Not in place. We expect that at least the issue of power will be addressed. That is not being talked about now. So many small and medium-scale businesses are closing down. It's not that they don't want to work, but the environment is not friendly enough to try. So I strongly believe that what we need to do, back to your point, let's not just celebrate. Let us have a template that if a country A comes, because you've known that we have this and that in our country, let's see what we can bargain for. But we can only bargain when they see that we are even responsible enough. Because what happened now, the U.S. Secretary of State arrived at Abuja quite late because there were some delays to arrive.
Well, that's the way you see it, yeah. All right, so as we draw the curtain, as we draw the curtain now, Nuruddin, now because how do we as a continent, how do we now identify which of these interests will be best for us with all sincerity of purpose? I mean, as a com, how do we identify that, okay, this interest is the best for Africa as a continent?
We obviously do not have difficulties in knowing what is best for us. The only difficulty is how do we deal with our governmentizing proclivity. If you are there for your country, for the people, you know exactly what to do. But the fact of the matter, I mean, take all of those countries where in Africa where leadership had been overthrown. What you find in the presidential palaces are far more than what their CBNs have. And so you ask the question, what did you need this kind of money for? And so this is money that should have gone into development. How do you explain the fact that $16 billion under Obasanjo went to power? What we harvested was endless darkness. And nobody is going to jail for that. How do you explain that we are an oil-producing country, because all that we have, when you look at our trade, even for last year, Americans were bringing in finished products for us to buy. We are taking crude oil to them. They refine and send back to us. Value is added, we pay more. And so we get pauperized the more. We just have the kind of market that is so irresistible. How come that for close to 2 decades, you have fought Boko Haram, you have fought bandits, you have done X, Y, Z, and you are not getting results? And all of those you put in charge are still in charge. They are in charge until the day you are either leaving or whatever. When there was an Anini who was invisible, who had capacity to appear and disappear, that was the myth that was built around him. But you had a president who had the will. And so he said to the IGP, you can't be sitting in this meeting with us. What are you doing here? Go get me that guy. The likes of CSP, as it then was Oniroro, SP, and Oyakire, were giving the money. Within a week, all of that about Aneni evaporated. And so we had sanity. Where are these persons? Why can't we get them? Why is it difficult? And why would you retain those persons who can't get them to return to remain in power? You see, it's a funny drama. So the issue is not because of your utilitarian value, but what was your use? What was your nuisance value that led to me winning an election is what determines what you get at the end of the day. And we are not saying that it does not happen globally, but there must be a deliberate policy that will say, oh, we will deal with the issue of security. Because once you do not have all of these infrastructures, what those persons will do is bring finished product here. Mechali was there under Obasanjo, they left. Dolop was there. And when they go, you know what happens? They go and create an army of unemployed people. And the type of army of unemployment they create is the one that is worse than those who have never known unemployment. It is a much better thing that you never had a job before than for you to lose a job, not on retirement. And so when you have this, the system is endangered.
All right, so Comrade Jude, quickly, as we wrap up finally now, how do we identify best interests for Africa? That's the question.
Okay, to identify, we need to internally ensure that we have a country that is safe, a country that is secure. We need to have a country where there's less corruption. For all these developed countries, right, we need to continue to identify with them, but with greater caution. What do I mean by that? You see, if you look at the cost of the dollar and the cost of the pounds, you cannot expect the US to come and tell us how we can create a mechanism that the $1 is equivalent to 1 naira. It's not possible at all. So we must begin to think of our own local economies. To see how best, when we meet these countries, we know what they can do for the beneficial. I some suggest that we're going to maintain our ties, but we should rather go there with what is meaningful. Thank God that hopefully by March there will be a business summit between Nigeria and the US around March. So let us go there with a good agenda, with something in our basket. So this is what we have to offer, and this is what we are looking for. The earlier we stop building our country as a dumping ground for product, there's no way we can survive. But for us, at the moment now, we need to reach out to all these developed countries. We have nothing for now that we can brandish to say these are also the developed world, the developed countries are those who are going to meet the but let us know taking from them. It should be something that will help our own economy to move on.
Okay. All right, so thank you so much. You want to add to that, to Nuruddin, quickly, 2 minutes. You want to add to what you said?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we need to do a mental as well as attitudinal transition, not just on the part of leadership, because sometimes the leadership is a reflection of those that are being led. What is missing? The missing link is about us, the people. Until and unless we allow that which is negative about us wither into that which is positive, we'll continue to go in this vicious cycle, lament, complain, and more often than not, when majority of us complain, it's because we are the periphery. The moment we get located at the center, what we had said was evil yesterday, we drown ourselves inside of it. So we need an orientation. We need to do a transition, as it were, for us to say, hey, we love this country. This is our country.
Okay.
Because in states like America or whatever, you have citizens who are ready to take bullet
for
the
nation,
interest
for
of
their
whatever.
country, yeah.
Who is going to take bullet? The only person who attempt to do that here are the poor soldiers who are dying. And when they make one small mistake, those who occupy political posts will run them down and say, if you say I'm a soldier, I say, and so what? But you know that he is protecting the environment for you to survive.
Yeah.
And in America, you don't do that. You won't try that with the man who is in the military. They are the only ones we know now for whom the wars of religion, the wars of ethnicity, the war of anything you think had completely collapsed. They are just one space, the Nigerian space.
Yeah.
But the appreciation is honestly a paltry one.
All right, so I want to say a very big thank you to our guests of the program today, Nuruddin Sulugi, a foremost Islamic scholar, and of course a public and international affairs analyst. Thank you so much for finding time to come on the show. And also to my big brother friend, Comrade Obasome Jude, the Chief Responsibility Officer of Just Maria Escriva, and of course the convener of political peaceful election rallies in Nigeria. I want to say a very big thank you, Comrade Jude, for finding time to come on the show today.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
All right, so it's very, very clear now. We understand that this Western interest will have the United Nations, the U.S. now, you know, there, and of course the Wagner or Russia, as spearheaded by the Wagner Group, and also to have the French, forces also interested in Nigeria, in Africa. So we need not to deny that we've got resources, we've got abundance of wealth that these nations, these interests are interested in Africa. So we need to open our eyes so that we know the best, because we have agreed that we cannot develop Africa on our own. We need to open our eyes so that we know the interest that is best for us as we move on in Africa. My name is Evan Sunokoge. On the same time next week on the same program, Africa Discourse. Goodbye and God bless you.